This podcast is a production of Cal Performances.
Welcome, Bill T. Jones, to this phone interview taking place for Cal Performances. We are so thrilled to have you back here on the campus of UC Berkeley and presenting your new work, Storytime.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure being here.
Just to begin, I would love for you to share with the audience listening today what inspired this new work.
Well, as a choreographer yourself, you know that seldom it comes like a bolt of lightning that there's an idea for a work, but sometimes it's a bunch of things. I'll walk you through them all, and maybe some are more interested than others. Two things are always going on for me. One is the question of having retired from dancing from the stage, what do I do with the creature who is a performer that lives inside of me, not the one who is a director and the creator, but the performer. And so I was thinking of some way of getting back on stage, and I thought, well, why don't I make a physically low-impact evening that would have room to go deep into something that I like to do, which is to talk, sing, tell stories. And I thought, why don't I just do a simple evening like that, made for small, intimate spaces, art galleries, all the places that company business has kept me focused on, because the company is a big enterprise that needs to make its numbers every year. I have 10 talented dancers who are hungry and chomping for more experiences, and they want to know what's there. So I wanted to separate that work from my own self as a performer, and I began to think about stories. And when I'm out here on the Mesa, where I'm calling from right now, I have a little place which is my retreat, and I call it the Casita. And here I have my favorite DVDs, things like Balanchine and Paul Taylor and Merce Cunningham, and I listen to a lot of music. I listen to rhythm and blues. I listen to things that I've been telling people I would listen to. And a favorite thing of mine is to listen to John Cage reading. I've had an album called Cage Reads Cage, and it has on it Indeterminacy. And I love his reading, and I was intrigued by what I understood Indeterminacy to be. And I thought, as I was listening to him read his stories, some of them which go back to the 1950s, I began to think about writing my own stories. Okay, that's what Bill would do. I would do a piece about me just writing 1-minute stories. But what would happen with the company? Well, the company needed another project. At that time, I was sort of straining to create something which would be dealing with another interest of mine, is the difference between live performance and performance that you see broadcast on the internet or in the cinema or on television. And I was going to do a piece that would be about that issue. Well, lo and behold, that was untenable. It didn't really have the sticking power of this other one, which was 100 stories. And I realized that the 90 stories. I realized that John Cage had brought in David Tudor after a permutation of the work had been performed, I believe, in Brussels. And David Tudor began to play a transcription of an early Cage piece for percussion, and kind of a strange counterpoint to Cage's reading. I thought, well, why isn't the company that David Tudor in my returning to John Cage's idea? So then, I think it may be around that time, my producer Bob Bursey might be able to better inform us, is around that time that I said, well, why don't I make something called Storytime, very tongue-in-cheek, and it will be a work that will be using John Cage as a kind of a mentor and seeing what came of this idea in my hands and through my imagination and heart and my company, as opposed to it being a Cunningham work, which it most certainly is not.
That's great. It's so wonderful, the history to go back to the Cage time, your inspiration for the work. He's been inspirational to so many generations now.
Many of us, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you couldn't have Cage without Marcel Duchamp. And I'm writing now. I'm sitting here every day. Another task I have to do, other than one of his interviews like this, is I've been asked to do the Toni Morrison lectures at Princeton in April. And I've chosen, there are 3 lectures on 3 different nights over 2 weeks. And I've chosen to have the lectures be about story time. Now, the other day while writing it, I was asking, well, why did I choose John Cage as a symbol of the modernist project? In a way, it's almost like your father, and you want to take your father to task for everything that you love about your father and that you don't understand. So I thought, well, why don't you, in fact, take Marcel Duchamp? Because you couldn't have John Cage without Marcel Duchamp. Right. Well, no. And you couldn't have, and what about Merce Cunningham? I said that John Cage, for me, is a bit like water, and Merce is one of the wonderful beverages you can make from water. So John Cage is that icon, that symbol. I hope he forgives me wherever he is, making him an icon and a symbol, an abstraction that I am trying to rub up against and keep my own creativity going forward and feed my heart.
Were you drawn to him partly, too, to try and understand him more, to deepen your relationship to him?
Well, maybe inadvertently I did, maybe, but I knew him somewhat in the 80s. He was a friend of a very good friend of mine, Betty Freeman, who was a woman of some resources, who was a great supporter of new music. So I've had dinner with him. I've done things with him. I think he and I are so different that it's shades of all the stuff that was not said in the culture wars. The culture wars, many of us assume that it was progressive forces in opposition to conservative forces. And to be sure, that was true with the likes of Jesse Helms versus Robert Mapplethorpe and so on. But there was also something about the ethos of what we call the modern art world. There are orthodoxies within that world. There's architecture. There's the sacred in it. And I find, rightfully or no, that John Cage, a very progressive force, stood in a way as something I had to rub up against or bounce off of, and we were not simpatical. It was not. On one level, it might be I'm, quote, more expressionistic than he is. He is more precisely a formalist. I think I'm also a formalist. So was I trying to get to know him better, or was I saying, what the hell is this?
Right.
This world that I've been trying as a black man from poor working class background, trying to find my way in this great narrative that we call modernism. And I would like you, sir, to come forward, and I'm going to talk to you using your language, but I'm going to try to stay clear to my heart and see what kind of stories come out of my imagination. What is my relationship to this idea of the universe is made of chaos, and the artist must tether himself to that chaos while imposing a strict form on it. This is what John Cage's belief is. So that is what I think is going on. Yes, I'm trying to get to know him, but I'm also trying to ask, what is there in these ideas that have been so important to so many people that is useful, and what has fallen by the wayside?
Right. And then how can you bring your own personal experience as an artist into these structures that he so adamantly kept after for so many years?
Yes. That was the big point of departure, and that is something that I hope to find out. And I feel a bit like Emily Dickinson at this point, because the thing hasn't been premiered. This is my letter to the world. Now, she says a letter undelivered, but it will be delivered. But what does the world see when I give myself to him as my absent mentor? What will the world see? What will there be to taste and feel? Because it will be its own thing. What will I see?
I'm curious, too. You know, I have a lot of history studying the work of Cunningham and Cage, and studied Cunningham dances and have been in reconstructions of things. and engaged with Cunningham's company with my dancers here at Berkeley. But a lot of people
Are you a Cunningham trained dancer?
Yes, I trained with Mel Wong for many, many years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also have done some work around kind of reimagining the 9 evenings. I do a lot of work with technology, so really investigating that particular time period around the late 60s and early 70s, where the work with experimental, the EAT project and all that was going on. So it's been really fascinating to me. But this is just sort of a question for people who don't have a lot of experience with this type of kind of formalist, deeply abstract work. How would you like an audience member to come in, and how would you like this work to be framed for them, or for them to experience?
This is the question, isn't it? This is the question.
Yeah.
Because I am not sure if it is a lack of courage on my part, but I feel that audiences, even audiences that know my work, maybe even more so than the other audiences that don't know my work, should have first of all, meet me in the way that Cage oftentimes in his readings would say, what you're about to hear is going to be about this long, and so forth. He would always frame it, and then he would start. Making it easier for the audience? I don't think so. Cunningham didn't do that. Cunningham seldom used program notes, if I remember. But I'm wondering if this is, I've been doing this thing where when we do lecture demonstrations or showings of the work, where I'll take an audience and ask them to all raise their hand when they think 1 minute is over, and the room goes quiet, and I have my production stage manager, Kyle Maud, on stopwatch. And it's really interesting for me and for them to see how long certain people think a minute is. And what.
Yeah. Time and. And what kind of responses did you get? Oh, I think I've lost you.
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Hello?
Hi. I think I lost you for a moment.
Did you? Maybe I moved it a little bit. You were asking. I was asking
how varied were the responses, and did you notice?
Well, no, they laugh. They laugh at that game. But I also say this is what I've been dealing with, and the nature of a moment, the nature of a minute. And if there's anything this piece is about, I say to them, and I'm not sure if it's still the truth, if there's anything this piece is about, it's something that John Cage was intensely interested in, and that is time and relationship of events. And then I say, well, welcome to a showing, and I sit down and we start reading. Will I do that at Berkeley? Is it necessary to an audience that comes there, the critics with their pens poised, everybody says, okay, now do me, show me something, or do I let them know that this work, the night that you're seeing it, is completely unique? We probably have spun the menu that day. Ted Coffey has done it. It's all fresh, and that they're going to be part of a process. Does that add another level of poetry? Does that add another level of interest? I'm asking you back your question because I don't know what I want, what people have, how they have to be prepared. Right. I'd like them to be as relaxed as possible, and I'd like them to understand that this is not going to be something I can tell them this is the meaning of it, and that a lot of it is on them, and that they are, in fact, recreating what we are presenting, because they will decide where their focus is. They will decide what they will have to listen deeply to themselves. And one of the things I've been saying for years, which probably came from my early training in avant-garde film, training is not the word, but the classes I took at the university in non-narrative film, our teacher, Ken Jacobs, or Larry Gottheim, filmmakers would say, it's very important that we understand that a lot of the best work is about the act of perceiving. And in other words, I translate that now as watch yourself watching. That's where the excitement is. That's where the drama is. And in a way, that's where the meaning is. Watch yourself watching, So
great.
how do I say that? How do I say that to them? Relax, folks. I know you came out to see this guy you have heard about, does Broadway, this guy who is over the top, this guy who is moving, this guy is gay, this guy is HIV positive, this guy has done this guy has done that. Well, lo and behold, this is what he's doing now. And he's in the center of the stage talking, reading these stories that are all over the map about his mother, about politics, about spirituality, about art making. And there is no rhyme or reason other than you should know that it was done by chance procedure, the order. But the stories were made in the crucible of the heart and mind. Do I stand on stage in Berkeley and give a little lecture before, or do I just let the curtain come up and they find what they find? That's what Next Knows you and I are doing right now. You're trying to prepare.
I guess I would land on the just opening the curtain, but
okay, thank you for that. But I think that might be, and maybe I think there will be an essay and a substantial program note. I think we need something.
I am curious though about what you're using for your chance procedures. Are you using cards, dice?
Random.org.
Oh, random.org. You're actually just doing a randomized thing online kind of thing.
We had, when we first started it, the first version, we had our company 6-year-old mascot, Mika Matheson, who is the daughter of Paul Matheson and Jennifer Nugent, who are two company members. She made a kind of a spin the wheel. She loved doing it with a crayon. It was really cute. That wasn't so efficient, but it didn't move so well. It got sticky on the same relationships. Then we tried some other methods, and I think we've now found that random.org is the easiest one.
And, being a choreographer myself and working sometimes in these chance procedures, how did you come to trust or develop it into your, this is going to have a multiple part question, but how did you kind of trust chance into your aesthetic kind of understanding of the work? And also...
Well, you realize one of the questions, I'll let you get back in a moment because I don't lose this. One of the things I have to deal with in the Morrison lectures at Princeton is what is the difference for me between improvisation and chance? Because I have always trusted improvisation. I have always felt that if I was I personally was properly prepared, warmed up, comfortable enough, then the spirit of Isadora would come into me and something beautiful would come out. You know the story of Isadora standing in front of her blue curtain with her hands crossed over her solar plexus and going into meditation and waiting for the great creative movements to come out of the earth, and then she would dance. Well, that's an old idea, isn't it, about contemporary dance? Well, what is the relationship of improvisation to chance? So I've always trusted that something could be done non-empirically. Yes, but John Cage's methods were so much more scientific and so much more rigorously applied in all sorts of different ways that I've been sort of following him as a mentor.
Now, did you have to create vivid and very clear structures for the sections of the work? And can you talk more about...
Don't you think we always tried to create very vivid?
True. But I mean, even more so perhaps because you're shuffling them and moving them.
Well, it's a very important question because I think people will think it's a Cunningham dance. I contend Merce is my favorite choreographer, period.
Okay, great. I'm
totally different. What I think made it, and I use this word advisedly, easier for Merce is that if you look at the movement from 1961 and you look at the movement from 1995, the life forms, all those things made a difference to a degree, but it's still very much in a certain style. It's still performed by people who have a certain training. It's still often free of text. It's still about those people as kind of divine puppets, and I say that with much love. My work has never been that consistent. What is singing a song, telling a story, rolling on the floor, contact improvisation, ballet, African-American social dance, all those things, that's what makes me a postmodern choreographer. Because we were the ones who were, I don't know your age, but I know that we were the generation, actually a generation after Judson Church, that was all bets were off about the orthodoxy of what could and could not be done on stage. Even the question about what was dance is something that I think our generation took very seriously. You know, I mean, you probably have heard me say this in interviews. The postmoderns said to us, a man in a teacup on stage could be a duet. And we believed them, and we proceeded in that way. Now, the material in our menu on Storytime reaches all the way back to the early 1980s when Arnie and I first made our decisive and I think influential duets using contact improvisation, German constructivist notions of stage space, what we had learned from independent film about repetition, inversion, retrograde, all those things are, and it goes all the way through works like Still Here. It goes through snatches of choreography, and I do scan the history of our work for that which is going to be, as much as possible, pure movement or sequences that can be reproduced. They have very little improvisation, really. Now, what is improvised is how you get from a phrase of Blauvelt in 1981 to a work that was made in 2001 to Mozart called Spent Days Out Yonder. Get rid of the Blauvelt text, get rid of the Spent Days Out Yonder Mozart, and what you have is this vocabulary, which was often inflected by who was dancing it. So it's very, our menus are wild. Some of the menu is like a theatrical problem. We have a section called the doctor's office, whereas one person is sitting on a chair. Yes, there's furniture in this that comes and goes. And two other people are lying on a couch, and they're doing this thing called hocketing. And if you're a musical person, you know, the hocketing is what we hear pygmies do, or many folk music people do. One tone is responded to by another tone to another player, and then at a certain signal, it shifts from a duple meter maybe to a triple meter. It goes back and forth. It's very, very simple. But that's what a whole minute might be, just that picture. Is that the same thing as a phrase from Merce Cunningham in the Inlets back in, when was the Inlets, maybe 70? And something done from Points in Space in the 1980s? It's quite different. And it's really hard on the dancers. They have to change their chemistry, literally, going from one motif to another.
And you've named them, given them all these names, or beginnings and endings and ins and outs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Janet does. We'll take a sequence from something like Spectre de la Rose, which is a solo I made for myself back in the 90s, to Berlioz's Spectre de la Rose. Very much of the influence of Trisha Brown, who I've been working with. And then it became a duet, and we took away the music, and we did it truly by the clock, taking this 8-minute-long solo, which is almost one continuous phrase, and dividing it into 1-minute increments that the dancers have to learn the in and out points of.
Oh, interesting.
So, other things were created for a minute, something called a flip book, which is a reference back to the non-narrative film training that Arnie Zane and I were interested in.
And are all the structures 1 minute?
No. Well, yes. Everything has... Yes. Well, yeah, it is. It is.
So all the pieces are one, and then they get shuffled in new order.
Some may extend for longer than a minute. You might put, if you do a duet from Valley Cottage, which was the last duet that Arnie and I made, well, the last of the trio, that might be 3 minutes and 25 seconds.
I see.
But the dancers have got to they know that they have 3 minutes to fill. They've got to make sure they get it all in 3 minutes.
I am so curious, too. I mean, I only watched the promotional video, but how you're framing history in this new work. You bring up, ideas of reconstruction, layering of movement over significant time periods and eras. I'm just fascinated.
Well, now, you're the woman that just said to me, just raise the curtain and let them see.
Yeah.
No, I'm...
So you don't want to maybe... okay.
I mean, what do you want me to...
Much.
How am I framing it? What do you mean? How am I framing it? To them, to the audience, you mean?
Well, or maybe me framing's the wrong word. I'm just interested in this, how you're bringing history into this new work, because you're doing these reconstructions on these new bodies.
I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know if they are reconstructions. Now it's the vocabulary of what the company is.
I see.
Since the company's 20-year anniversary back at the kitchen in 94, I think it was, 94, 96, some things have been in the repertory and new dances come and go. And we've been doing for a while now a site-specific series of works. I think we're up to number 8 now, called Another Evening. And Another Evening was traditionally a kind of a pièce de passion. We take maybe 3 rehearsals and we'd make an event, which is kind of a prototype of what the menu is now in Storytime. If there was material I wanted these young dancers to know, I would ask Janet to reach back with videotapes and teach them this, and then we'd put it together in some very loose structure that Daniel Bernard Romain, our composer at that time, our musical director, would sort of hold together. And those were done every year, maybe once or twice for special events. So
similar kind of like to the Cunningham mini event ideas?
Well, perhaps they are. Perhaps they are. But for me, it's yeah, maybe it is. But for me, it's always that thing used to be served with this kind of sauce. What if I took the sauce away and did this?
Oh, interesting.
Or this movement was made for this purpose in this large piece. Now, if I take it out, for instance, in a piece which is called Serenade the Proposition, which were one of the 2 Lincoln works that I made, and there was I was trying to find a way that abstract movement could talk about the issues around the Civil War. One of them is called, it's a trio that you hear a text that I wrote. Well, actually, I didn't. I constructed this text because it uses the Gettysburg Address. It uses Lincoln's second inaugural, I believe, and Frederick Douglass, some things. And the first thing you hear is, it could be said that history is a woman whose house is divided. And you see a woman walk up stage and 2 men come out, and they begin this strange kind of picture grappling as you hear this Lincoln-esque language, accumulated, deaccumulated, very rhythmical, and their movements, which the image is roughly that of a person standing between 2 warring other persons, but you've already been told that history is a woman. So is that woman Liberty herself? Is it the Union? Is it Jennifer, who is just dancing with Paul and Eric at that moment? It's all the stuff that we as contemporary dance makers, I do, contemporary version of theaters, love. I get to figure it out. I get to, that is, and that movement used to sit in Serenade in a certain way to talk about the Civil War. Now you no longer hear that text. You only see that movement, which moves in a certain way. And they don't need to know where it comes from. So, and you know what's more? I'm sorry, I'm talking a mile a minute.
It's fascinating, wonderful.
Well, one other thing that we're doing, this is going to be a first. No, it won't be a first. We tried it once with a piece called Chapel Chapter, giving a program to the audience. The program had materials that were in parallel to the audience, not parallel to the subject of the piece the audience was seeing. Well, we will hand out these menus, and they actually look like flow charts. They look like this columns. The first column is the minute. The second column is the event, and there's things like the Serenade Trio, Valley Cottage, Shapes Standing. But, it's a menu. We have well over 80 events that any day we could draw from, and then you have what performer will be doing it. That's at the top of the page, and then you can look at that performer. You come down, and you see at this minute what square, because incidentally the stage is divided up into.
Right, I saw the demarcations in that.
Right, 11 or 10 boxes. It's very Cartesian. So not only do you know when Eric is performing, but you know where he's standing and what he is doing and for how long he's doing it. And the audience will be given this. Now, it's like looking at someone's budget figures, actually, in a way. It could be fun for those persons. Like, I'd be curious to know what the choreographer made up. You won't know what our labels mean. If you say doctor's office, or if you say fondly, if you say maelstrom, if you say, those are all these motifs.
Right.
And the dancers will have these on stage, but they cannot remember, they cannot learn every day between the time that we
right, because
there's
so many pieces.
Yeah, literally, it's going to be part of it. We're not hiding it. They're handsome. They're on the side of the stage. Nobody really leaves the stage. And you can see them studying them while they're not on stage. And then you can even see when they make a mistake because somebody will indicate to them, no, you're wrong, and they've got to correct it. Yeah.
So you're really revealing. I think it's so beautiful. What I love about this work, having not seen it yet, but already I can imagine it. Just taking away like the pretense of the author and revealing more the complexity of the map, the complexity that we have to each other in the world. I think it's fascinating.
I mean, I would speak to, assuming that you are also a postmodern generation,
yes.
But we assume that going all the way back to Barbara Dilley and improvising and Grand Union and people like that, we assume that this was chance-based. Chance-based was the future.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. No, let me get this, not chance-based. Task-based choreography was where the great truth of the creative process was. We are not, and for years we said this proudly, we don't do characters in our company. We are people who are performing events, tasks, which is what Merce essentially said. He said that he feels that what they do is people are asked to do interesting things on stage. Well, that's also the way we felt. Now, with me, it was a little different, we all know, because Bill insisted on bringing in issues like the real world, I call them, at least my world.
Yeah.
Who is dancing, who is watching, gender, race, sexuality, all those things were actually part of this, quote, task-based world. Now,
and it's simple enough, it's simple enough to say to do tasks, but if you believe already that we are already performing versions of ourselves, task takes a different layer.
Very interesting, very interesting. Well, and here we are. This is a late postmodern piece, actually, because we all know everything you just said was very astute and real. Then you might ask, okay, then what's the poetry? What's the news here? I think it's about the way things are combined, who is doing it, and those stories I am reading.
Right. Where did the stories come from?
The stories come from, some of them are diaristic, some of them are philosophical. I'll give you an example of one story. It's in 1992. We're performing in Prague on our day off. My mother, Estella Jones, and Arthur Aviles and I take a bus out to the countryside to the Theresienstadt concentration camp. The bus does not go to the camp. It leaves us in the village nearby. We're stunned. We sit there, left to our own devices, how we will get out to the memorial. A German couple on vacation picks us up, drives us out to the memorial. It's deserted. Nobody even take a ticket. My mother, this black woman sitting there sweating, wiping her face. She doesn't know what the significance of this place is. She thinks I brought her all this distance to a cemetery because there are these markers all over the place. We walk around, and at one point she says, to make conversation, she says, well, son, I always heard that if you want to learn how to play the guitar, then you have to spend the whole night in the cemetery. And the next day, sure enough, you'll be able to pick that thing. You'll be able to play John Henry. Now, that is one of the stories. Now, of course, it's told in 1 minute. Now, and that story has ramifications throughout many other stories. My companion is Jewish. My companion's mother is the age my mother would be if she was still alive, a Jewish woman who survived the war. Her father, John Henry, that song about a black man building the railroad to put his strength against a machine. Estella Jones, who I never knew could pick the guitar because I never saw her, telling me she knew learned how to pick the guitar from being in a cemetery all night. The stories are like that.
Bill T. Jones, thank you so much for taking time to do this interview. You are an absolute inspiration to myself and to many, many generations of young and aspiring dancers and people who love your work. And you're such a conduit of incredible artistic depth, and so excited to see your new work.
It's my pleasure to bring it there. Thank you so much for all your kind questions. Look forward to seeing you.
This podcast is a production of Cal Performances.